Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Christine Parakis and the Career Invincibility Radio Show. I am super excited about my guest today. I call him a friend, but Sam Morris is also an enlightened leadership and embodied wisdom coach and consultant to entrepreneurs and executives. In 1999, Sam endured a spinal cord injury that paralyzed him from the waist down. He was an extreme athlete up to that point, and this incident was life-changing, but it catalyzed a deep dive into somatic healing arts, depth psychology, wisdom traditions, and the innate intelligence of the body. It hasn't been an easy road for Sam, but he moves through life with grace and power and transformation that he offers his clients in trainings of how to master the inner workings of the mind, body, and spirit and live from an enlightened state of presence in their business and in their personal lives. Sam, welcome to our show. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I mean, let's just dive right in, right? In our show, we talk about the zigs and zags of people's journeys to the success they are. And I know that you've had some.
Zigs and zags, indeed. You know, it's funny how I feel like looking back on my life, there has been a lot of zigs and zags, but there's also been this sort of linear trajectory as well. If I look at the sort of the timeline of my experience, and it's I had just before my spinal cord injury in 1999, I had just finished leading a 3,800 mile trek across the United States on bikes for 9 teenagers. And it was only 2.5 months after that happened that this incident, I call it an incident now rather than an accident, because, I think if we look past the idea of accidents, and since accidents imply that there's a victim, and I'm choosing to not operate from that victim mindset. So I'm looking at it as an incident that has been very challenging, and certainly was the catalyst for a deeper level of exploration into leadership potential.
Yeah, I mean, you've gone from being, a super athlete, right, extreme sports athlete, and you've had to adjust some of the ways that you do things, and it hasn't all been, you get to a point where you've integrated it to an incident, but you still find yourself facing challenges. How is it different, how you managed them before to how you manage these challenges that come up today?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Initially, there was a lot of shock that accompanied my spinal cord injury, and I think from day one, I had a really good attitude about my situation. That's just kind of innate in me, to have a good attitude no matter what the circumstances are. Not that I don't go into dark places, psychologically or emotionally. I certainly do, and continue to from time to time. But I always had a good attitude about it. But I think what really was challenging was the depth of trauma that a spinal cord injury has on one's life. I think it's one of the most traumatic things that one can obviously experience on a physical level, and then that translates to the psychological and emotional levels in ways that are hard to even describe. And so early on, I think a lot of it was just managing the trauma effectively and getting used to being me in a very new body. I mean, I went from, like you said, a very athletic person. I had these huge legs at the time from cycling across the U.S., and I was an avid snowboarder and skier. And suddenly, everything was still from my navel down on November 9th, 1999. And that really was shocking to my system. I went from 6'3", standing and sort of looking down at almost everyone, to being 4'10" in a wheelchair and looking up at everyone. And it was a blow to my sense of self. And I think that, while most people, thank God, won't go through something as traumatizing as a spinal cord injury. There are experiences that we all go through that are a blow to our sense of self. And one area that I've really shined in with my career and how I've been able to help my clients is working with people who have been going through their own personal blow in their career or their relationships, and helping them to discover who they are beyond the identity that they had, that was, that like who they are, that is consistent. Like there was a sense of myself that when I got hurt, I no longer felt. It was like that sense of self had been removed from me. And I could show up with a good attitude and a smile on my face and the sort of resilient sort of perspective. But there was a deep part of me that felt like it had been compromised or broken. And I find that that is common with so many people, where their lives have been derailed by certain circumstances, and they need to learn how to connect to that sense of their essential selves. And it's that essential self that I've been working on cultivating inside of myself and reminding myself and remembering that self.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, the thing is that I think this is something we all go through at different junctures. We don't have to have a spinal injury for that, right?
That's right. That's right.
But thankfully, you have been able to channel this into your great superpower. Mm-hmm. And I know that you do a lot of work with meditation and breath work, and you're working with high-functioning people.
That's right.
So how do you marry those things? Because, we all think, oh, I just don't have time to do it today. It might get it into your schedule, but
That's right. That's right. Well, the way I like to look at it is, how much time do you spend really, really effectively connected to yourself and connected to an intentional direction? And how much time do you spend sort of ruminating on past thoughts and things that aren't really moving the needle forward in your life? And if you really objectively stand back and you kind of look at the activity of your mind and your feelings and how you spend your time, most people will find that they actually spend a lot more time ruminating or zoning out or doing things that aren't really intentional. And they actually have quite a bit of time available to them if they actually really are honest with themselves. And the thing that is so beautiful about meditation and breathwork practices, these somatic embodiment practices, is they really help to declutter the mind so that when you are focused, when you are doing what you're doing, you can really be doing it versus kind of half doing it or distracted as you're doing it. So I find that it's the essential thing for high-performing entrepreneurs to not only eat well and exercise and take care of their bodies, but also to take care of that inner world. And when you're meditating and when you are doing breath work or somatic practices, your inner world is being taken care of. It's like a regular decluttering practice. We accumulate so much emotionally and psychologically within ourselves. Now, we wouldn't treat our house like that. We wouldn't let that clutter add up inside of our house. We wouldn't do that with the bills on our desk or with furniture or food in our refrigerator. So why do we do it with our own psyche? Now, when we can clear out the stuff that is no longer serving us, the rotting foods in that refrigerator of our psyche, when we clear that out, then we can function much better in the world.
Oh, I love that expression, the rotting foods in our psyche. Like, I'm thinking, okay, no one's looked in my closet lately where things have gotten stacked up, but I really haven't done a deep dive into my mind as to what garbage is still hanging out, the rotting fruit of my mind.
Oh, yeah, and we all have it, It's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, I've worked with, at this stage of the game, I've worked with so many people who are high-performing, high-achieving entrepreneurs and executives, And on the outside, things may seem to be going really well. They've accumulated wealth, they've accumulated status, they have their families, they have their homes, their cars, etc. But there's also an accumulation of past history in their psyche, in their emotional body, that is not allowing them to feel as fulfilled or as free as they could be inside.
So can you give us a little taste of what that might look like to, declutter some of the rotting fruit that we carry with us?
I certainly can. One of my favorite breath work practices is a circular breathing practice. It has a number of different names that have been attributed to it in our culture, but it's an ancient yogic practice of circular breathing and doing so for a long period of time. And if you do it in a very highly intentional way, what you notice is that as you keep breathing in this way where you're hyperoxygenating your cells and you're moving a lot of breath through, you naturally begin to experience emotional release. And sometimes you start to experience insights and inspirations that come from a deeper place within your psyche, that a place that is normally inaccessible to our normal operating system. So our normal operating system is essentially playing out a lot of the same thoughts and feelings that it has on a regular basis from day to day to day to day to day, which is why you can kind of show up on any given day and 95% of the thoughts that you think seem to be basically a lot of the same thoughts that you had yesterday and the day before and the day before that. It's kind of like, well, if I want to really move in my life, I can't be continuing to have all these same thoughts and feelings. This is taking up bandwidth in my brain to be able to keep thinking about the same stuff. And here, if I really want to change, I need to open up new space in my awareness. Well, this breathwork practice really does that. It really sheds emotions and it sheds history. It seems to really shed history from the body. And you can be in a state where not only are you able to have emotional release that feels very positive. I mean, you might go through a period of crying or feeling some anger or frustration emerge, and you might feel all of this resistance that is trying to sort of prevent you from, you'll think, oh, I just got to stop breathing. I got to stop breathing. But it's that resistance, when you can notice it and keep breathing through it, that there's something else beyond that. And the resistance is there for a reason. The resistance is there because our brains evolved around trying to keep things the same, trying to keep things safe. They didn't evolve around actually moving the needle forward in our lives. This whole idea of continuing to evolve and change and experience new things and have a sense of freedom and forge an independent direction, this is relatively new in the human history, to have the freedom and inspiration to do that kind of thing. So for millennia, we evolved around keeping things the same. So we'll experience this unconscious resistance while we're breathing. And on a logical level, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense until you look at it through an evolutionary biology history and you realize that we actually evolved that way. And so when you can keep breathing through it, what happens is naturally some part of you, this part of your history, begins to surface. And when it surfaces, it actually can be let go of. Just like when you have a good cry or you scream into a pillow or something like that, but in a more, to me, in a more integrative and productive way. And along with that, oftentimes people will find themselves lucid dreaming while they're awake and having these profound experiences that are quite expansive, that are informing them about where they are in their lives and creating a greater context for where they want to move.